Hi, everyone. I am Brett Schneider, currently Senior Director of Brand Partnerships at Complex Networks. And I'm here to speak with you all today, along with a panel of handpicked panelists about how we redefined community during a time of COVID. I think this year was particularly difficult for everyone in a variety of different ways. And I think, community is something that we were all missing out on. Not having the neighborhood community that we've come accustomed to, not having the community in your office with your colleagues that we're accustomed to. And then I think a lot of brands lost their sense of community with their audience as things were shut down and different behaviors needed to change as a result of the pandemic. So I brought three really amazing women here today who each can kind of speak to a different way that their brand reimagined community during a time of COVID. So I have Kay Young, the VP of Corporate Partnerships at the LA Sparks. I have Rachel Shapiro, the SVP of Marketing Strategy at Complex Networks, and Laura Petro, the Senior Manager of Strategic Marketing at Peloton, who leads the global instructor programming market. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining me.
Hi,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
having us. Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Perfect. So I thought, today it's a bit of a three-act play, I guess you could say. Would love to kind of get a sense of what was the relationship with your community pre-pandemic? How did the brand kind of pivot during the pandemic to maybe reimagine that relationship? And then at the end, would love to talk a bit about where we see things going in the future. Are there methods, practices, behaviors that are going to stick and continue even beyond the pandemic? So I guess to start, Kay, we'll start off with you. What was the relationship with your community, the LA Sparks fans, pre-pandemic? I'm sure it looked very different than what it looks like right now.
Yeah, it was. So we were playing in Staples Center, playing in arenas throughout the country, and suddenly we found ourselves in an uncertain time and really pivoted. We spent last season down in Bradenton, Florida at IMG Academy in what we call the Wobble. And we really had a successful season. Our ratings were up 68%. We saw a viral movement with nearly 9 million impressions from the orange hoodie. So we really adapted. But certainly, it's different when you're used to being in an arena for your games and in front of your home fans when you come back from a long road trip. So it was a different adjustment for us and what that looked like in the season.
Yeah, I would imagine the energy is certainly different when you don't have a stadium filled with screaming fans, but people are kind of watching back home that's, very difficult. And it also requires you to kind of rethink that entire in-arena experience.
Yeah, it certainly was different. It was even different just being a part of the team and not being there and watching the games at home like the fans do. So it was a really interesting dichotomy to work both sides of it. But yeah, we're excited to be back at home again this season and, have our community back with us as well.
I bet. I bet. So I guess, Rachel, same question. I would imagine in the content space, in a space where Complex has also really benefited from live events themselves, being kind of thrust into altered, and the live events have kind of shifted away. What was that relationship community, of the viewers of Complex pre-pandemic?
Yeah, we were pretty excited in the fall of 2019, coming out of another successful Complex Con, our kind of crown jewel of our programming for the year. And, we had a lot of thought leadership about innovation and the ways that we wanted to continue to strive to change and, enhance the experience for the community. Who was really feeding off of the energy of being connected to some of their favorite brands, celebrities, musicians. And obviously, come March, we were uh, trying to think about ways that we were going to be able to straddle creating something for our community and doing it safely. And so a lot of time was spent, brainstorming with across our entire organization with some very, very smart people and potential partners so that we could bring that same energy to life for this community. And our result was a very, very fast moving, very never done before complex land, our first
Hmm.
virtual experience for the complex community that included a lot of those complex con highlights, big shopping experience, entertainment, connectivity. So I think that it pushed us to be innovative, it pushed us to be nimble, and I think that the result was something that we were extremely proud of because of how quickly we had to jump into it and how well we were still able to connect with our audience, of streetwear and music fans. And so we're all very proud of the very hard work that went into that. Lots and
Hmm.
lots of team members contributed, and a very innovative partner in the agency Jam3. And so
Hmm.
this is, a great case study in the way that you can pivot and you can adapt, and you know you can get really creative in this space. And we're obviously very lucky, unlike in the experience of the WNBA, we're very lucky that we already had a wonderful digital audience, somebody that we were, speaking to on a daily basis through our content. So it was, a potential smoother migration, but it was a completely new platform for us. And
Hmm.
I don't know if people knew what to expect, but I think that they were excited about the journey and getting to experience it over the course of 5 days in December. So that was our
Yeah.
probably our biggest pivot in 2020, along with a lot of programming pivots, a lot of remote shows, a lot of new formats. And then, I mean, I'm sure just like, Kay and Laura, we also had to do a lot of internal community management. We had a lot of new ways to communicate with each other and to get the job done, virtually, and manage everyone's stress.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's been a big part of our story too. That we've been able to overcome a lot of those hurdles. We're not a gigantic company, but it's definitely a huge obstacle to communicate with people that you usually can have a conversation with, in you know, your kitchen if you wanted to, um, or in a conference room, versus the way that we're all talking to each other today.
Very true. And what I gather, it sounds like the brand doubled down on authenticity too. Really sticking by what it did best, and I think keeping that authentic voice for their audience while for the audience while there is all this kind of chaos and unrest going on around us, did give the audience kind of almost a cornerstone of some normalcy.
Yeah, I think that it's something that people were really looking forward to. I think that they understood the reason why it would be irresponsible of us to hold a 60,000 person event in the convention center. And I think that it was 100% the right decision to take it virtual and to enhance the experience and do things that you couldn't usually do when you were, at a giant live event. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think we stuck to our DNA of working with wonderful brands that launch new product, exclusive product, just as they do at ComplexCon. And we got to have a lot of really authentic conversations directly with the consumer through a lot of our live panels. So that was exciting, and I hope that that's something that we even push further into in the coming year.
Love it, love it. And Laura, as someone who didn't have a Peloton pre-pandemic and now is currently the proud owner of one, and regular rider. Um, you know, I think when I think about the spinning space, and I think we talked about this, it felt very fragmented. There were all these different places and ways that you could, either go into a studio or do it at home. So, same question. Would love to hear a bit about, what was that relationship before the pandemic with some of your members?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I have to say, Rachel, Complex Land was so much fun. Getting to dress up my little avatar on my phone was a joy. So you guys did an amazing job. So for us, I mean, community has always been at kind of the heart of everything Peloton does, and I think we sort of found ourselves in an interesting position when the pandemic started to hit, in that people always look to Peloton for that sense of community. Our members are always meeting up for classes, riding together, lifting together, running together. And when it became one of, honestly, the only outlets for people when you're stuck at home, and you still want that sense of community, even more than ever before, um, we sort of found ourselves having to double down on the delivery of that promise to our members, and really just kind of looking at it and saying, okay, people have always looked to us for community. Community has always been kind of a cornerstone of Peloton, and how our members inspire each other and motivate one another. And then when you're at a point where so many people, not only that sense of community, but also the sense of motivation that, just you were missing when the pandemic started to hit, and, continue to be kind of stuck at home. We really look to say, like, how can we continue to deliver on what we've kind of always done? And I think what you said a minute ago about authenticity, and really like staying true to what we offer as a brand and what we can provide to our members in our community. So for us, I think it really was about, like, how do we continue to be that source of positivity and light, and a place where people, albeit virtually, can come together and still have that sense of togetherness, even in a time where we're not actually physically together. And, the energy that you might have once gotten from an in-studio class, we're still creating those moments for you to come together and have that shared experience and energy. So I think for us, it really was about, like, being even more dedicated to delivering on that core Peloton experience, and just kind of staying really focused. And I think what Rachel mentioned as well, of like, how do we do that and still, like, with our teams all remotely now, we had a period of time where our instructors were teaching classes from their New York City apartments, to continue to deliver that value to our community. So for us, it was, like, I think as a team, a really big challenge in kind of innovating on how the work happens, so that we can continue to do what we do for our members, which is provide a positive, outlet and a place to come together in a time when kind of people needed it even more than ever before.
I think you're spot on there, and I want to ask a follow up to that, and then I do want to bounce back to Kay for a quick second, just to rebuttal Rachel on the digital presence that the Sparks probably had pre-pandemic. I want to hear a bit more about that, but I would also love to hear, given the fact that you do so much of the work with the instructors, and you brought this up, doing rides from their apartments. I got to experience the Last Dance ride. I watched every episode and was super excited when I saw Alex Toussaint doing that ride. How was that? I mean, I imagine that was a bit of a process to get, the ability to record and get instructors comfortable with shooting from their homes. Broadly, even beyond the members, like, how was that with the instructors as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I have the pleasure of working very closely with our instructors and our content team, and they are just, there's no one like them. And they, when this all happened, and they're, what they wake up every morning to do is to inspire and be of service to our community. And so it really was like a lot of dedication, a lot of long hours, figuring out how are we gonna, with remote productions. But then, as you mentioned, even like what are the things happening that are really fun right now, like The Last Dance, that we can, again, just kind of inject that positivity, that levity. So I would say like our team is just really, really stellar. And I think our instructor team and our extended content team, there's so many people behind the scenes who work really hard to put all of the classes on. I would say it was just like a Herculean effort to deliver, best in class content uninterrupted to our community. So it was really like all hands on deck to make that happen. And I think the team, as with anything that's live, right? Like they're used to teaching live classes. So it's almost like an iteration of being able to be nimble and flexible and adaptive, almost like on steroids. So I would say it was amazing to be a part of and just be able to provide those unique moments to our community and continue to iterate and just, think behind the scenes, like what else can we be doing? There's some really amazing rides that we do. Like one ride that we have, the Jess King experience, is literally like every Thursday night, it was like she creates a club on that bike. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, this is, people can't go to the club. People can't go on the dance floor, but they want to be on the dance floor. So it was just really cool to see the creativity like of our talent and of our team to say like, how can we keep making these really special moments and almost like over deliver on what we kind of like. There's always a desire to, I think, like level up what we're doing and what we're able to offer for our community.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how folks step up in a time of crisis and just what's possible when backs are up against the wall. And I think the three of you obviously have touched on how each of your brands have stepped up. So before I move on to the second question, Kay, would love to hear a bit about, what was that digital presence like for the Sparks? Because I know, we've talked in the past and we've talked about, how much you've leaned on the players themselves, the athletes, to kind of tell a more complete story beyond just what's going on the court. And I would imagine that during this time, that was a really interesting territory to play around where it humanized the athletes in a slightly different way than we're all most familiar with when we're watching them compete on the basketball court.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I'm very, very fortunate. Like Laura said, I have an incredible marketing team that we work with here at the Sparks. We're #1 in the league in marketing, and they really help tell the story of our players. I think also during this time, you saw the community that is the WNBA, and she's led by Nneka Ogwumike, who's the president of the Players Association. And this year we wore Say Her Name on our jerseys, part of that campaign with Breonna Stewart, as well as recognizing other women. And, it was pretty incredible to see this community come together and to really share their voices and their experiences and how we unite during these times. So everyone was going through a pandemic. There were a lot of other things happening, from social justice and all sorts of different things coming at us. And these women came together, used their voice to play on the court. And then as the Sparks, we actually created a campaign called Change Has No Off Season to help continue to amplify the voices of our players. And we were also super, super fortunate. Our marketing manager, Zofia, was actually in the Wubble and captured some fantastic content that really showed the players from a different angle than we've ever seen before. So them sitting in the ice buckets with our head athletic trainer and these different moments. And then as you saw, new platforms emerge with TikTok. So different players having those dance moments and different things really helped create a voice for our players on our own social media as well as theirs, and continue to grow the message that we have as a team and as a league.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I was very familiar with the campaigns that you guys had run, and I think it's awesome to see the rest of the world kind of catching up to what the W's been doing for years. So it's been amazing to watch you guys just be trailblazers in that respect. And finally, everyone is kind of waking up and, championing that as well. So we did get oh, sorry, go ahead, Kay.
No, I think I appreciate it. And I think one of the biggest movements we saw was, like I mentioned earlier, the Orange Hoodie campaign. I think whether or not people even realized that was a WNBA hoodie. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this summer it was the number one selling item in Fanatics. You know, I think every NBA player had it on at one point, which was an incredible movement to see. And obviously, part of it came from, that picture of Kobe Bryant with his daughter and wearing that hoodie, because of what he stood for with that movement as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we move on to the second question, I did just see something pop on screen for a question from the audience. And I'll do it around the horn the same order that we did. So, okay, we're going back to you first. Are there any plans for a hybrid model as we come out of the pandemic? Kind of taking some of what worked during this time and adapting it to once we can go back to a live experience.
Yeah, I think we'll see some of the things stick for us. So, for example, this year, all of our media was remote and virtual. And so I think having people from all different outlets be able to tap in and engage in the press conferences was a great opportunity for us. And I think that also helped correlate grow ratings. Um, I think definitely we also found ways to be adaptive and engage fans that aren't just local to us. So obviously, if you can't come to a game, how do we continue to engage you and invite you into the experience of being a Sparks fan? So I think
Mhm.
we'll keep some things. Obviously, some things were purely situational, but I'm sure we've all learned through this time. Some things are fantastic that we've pivoted on and really panned out for us.
Yeah,
And look forward to continuing to grow that and the use of technology.
agreed. Agreed. I love those virtual seats that were going on. I thought that was one of the coolest things. Just being able to like log in and wave and sit next to some celebrity that I'd never have a chance to sit next to, albeit virtually. Rachel, same question for you. Any hybrid models that Complex is going to adapt to well, hopefully when we go back to the real normal.
Yeah, 100%. I think that we have plans to have another complex land for sure. Plans are already away. We're excited about improving upon that experience, and of course, we want to get back to live events. Complex Con is a big one and a tentpole for us, but we also have missed out on the opportunity to have live events with our brand partners and celebrations around some of our big milestones that we've hit. So I think we'd love to go back to IRL experiences. I think that we still will continue to push ourselves into more innovative opportunities around tech. I think that that's something that really excites our audience, and I think we'll continue to try to expand the way that we connect with the community. I mean, that's going to always be a part of our North Star as creators and a media company that's trying to build beyond just the .com. So I think that we'll continue to play and experiment and take some risks and try to continue to entertain the way that we have and connect with our audience in formats.
Awesome. And lastly, going to you, Laura, hybrid models. Are we going to see more of Alex Toussaint shooting in his apartment?
I don't know about that. I will say I think what has been really amazing is just going back to like the creativity that we've seen in this period and just being open to thinking outside the box, even in a bigger way than ever before. So again, I think we're in a unique position where, as much as I'm sure Alex loved having us in his home, we have an incredible studio that we film all of our content from. But certainly, I think from a marketing perspective, just continuing to push on how we're connecting with our members in our communications, the different formats we've been experimenting with as we launched our first brand campaign during this time. So I think doing more of that, I think definitely on the marketing side, it's this time has kind of forced us to be more creative than ever before, which is an awesome thing. So I think we'll continue to see more of that, but I don't know about any promises of more from home classes. I know we'll be very excited. While events are definitely to a lesser degree, I think probably than Rachel and Kay experience. We do love, we bring members come into our studio to celebrate milestones. They want to meet their instructors. We host an event every year called Homecoming that was actually really created by our community that we then took and supported and eventized. So we've been doing all of that virtually, which is great. But I think we're excited for when the time comes and we can kind of welcome everyone back into the studio again and kind of have those special moments that we're working hard to kind of replicate virtually. But we'll be excited to see that come back when this is all hopefully over.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to hear more about that brand campaign when we get to the second question, because we talked about that briefly, and I think it's really interesting, the approach that you guys took with that. So yeah, I think moving on, the second question that we had in this kind of panel, how did the brand pivot during the pandemic? And I think we all touched on this briefly, throughout the conversation. It's been pretty fluid. But, Kay, how did you guys pivot during the pandemic to kind of adjust to this new normal with your community?
Yeah, so I think for us, obviously, the obvious points are our players are in the bubble and on TV only. So really, we came together and said, how do we continue to have that engagement? What does that look like with our fans, with our season ticket holders, our partners, and our community? So pregame, we had these amazing pregame shows and events where people could log on and still come together virtually. And we had our in-arena hosts there. And we'd have different players and celebrities drop in to engage with our fans so people could still see each other and celebrate together. And then we kept up our virtual clinics and made sure that from our community standpoint with that, we were actually able to go out to those schools, make sure that the students participating had the supplies that they needed so that they could log on and still have that exact same experience. And then with our partners, we pivoted for sure. So any of our events that were in person, we had to say, what does that look like now? How do we continue to adjust that? I think some of it we were able to move from a social media standpoint and really worked with our team to create some engaging and awesome content for our partners that wasn't just putting a logo on something, but that our fans really enjoyed. And then I also think we looked at new opportunities to say, what are some things we haven't done that we'd like to do? And what does that look like during this time? So with one of our partners, we actually held a roundtable featuring two of our players and our head coach. And it ended up being a fantastic event. And so we really just wanted to keep that sense of community and really what that looked like. And I think technology helped make that so easy for us. And having the access to our players also, they would log in at events with our season ticket holders, and we did different types of things, as Laura talked about, that sense of community, and you brought up authenticity. So health and wellness is so true to who we are. And so we have our athletic trainer and we have our head strength and conditioning coach, and brought them into the community of our fans. And what could they do at home during this time, and really also talk to kids about what they could do at home during these times. And then, how do we adjust? And it's really, I think you had to be nimble, right? None of us were in charted territory. So it was adjusting and saying, great, this works well, this doesn't. And also listening to our fans, listening to our community. What do they like? What do they want? What do they want more of? And same thing with our partners. I think that was a really great moment. And even listening to our players, what did they enjoy? We actually, our game ops and entertainment director had fans and sponsors and family do videos for our players and bring them into the bubble so that they didn't know it was happening during the game. So keeping that sense of community on both sides was really important for us.
Yeah, it's amazing how in a time where everything feels super separated, that you could still create these very intimate moments that feel super personal to the people experiencing them. And then also being able to um, kind of build more personality into the people that don't necessarily get to be seen on the court, the strength and conditioning coaches, the people that I know, I know you're an athlete. I played sports. I'm not going to say I was an athlete, quote unquote, but I played sports my whole younger life. But you have this relationship with those coaches that the audience and the fans don't get to see. So being able to bring those people to the forefront, um, again, really helps people kind of better engage with the team, and then better understand the team that they're a fan of, and all of the people that go into it, not just the players they see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when we're used to being in a stadium, we're with 13,000 of our closest friends or more, and
Right.
we know that sports unite people, athletics, culture, music, these types of things we're all involved in. So yeah, we had a fun time adjusting. Sometimes we're a little more fun than others. But yeah, it was a learning experience, and I think we all came out of this stronger and better for it.
I agree. I agree. So Rach, how did Complex pivot? I have no idea. Tell me.
Well, as I mentioned, Complex Land was probably our biggest innovation, our biggest pivot or adaptation, I should say. But I think that what I was so impressed with, and just for context, I was out on maternity leave up until March, so I came back right as everybody had dispersed from the office, and I was so wowed by the fact that our production team had already just like lightning fast devised a plan, to continue production and to continue delivering, the content that our community expects, and then went above and beyond and added to our slate, which was just, beyond me, because everybody was launching new programming on new platforms like IG Live, remotely, and really, working as a team in a very beautiful choreographed way, and that was extremely impressive to me. I can't take credit for it. I've got to give kudos to our head of production, David Weinstein, but it was pretty miraculous that we kept a lot of our programming on the air, in areas where we couldn't be flying, to LA as we usually do for a lot of our marquee shows, and getting those guests. They pivoted and they created something that could be done via Zoom, and
Mm-hmm.
our brand partnerships team was able to continue to deliver on content and sponsorships, with the help of remote directors and Zoom video villages, and so it was. Nimble seems to be the word of the day. I think everybody who's been, keeping the lights on during the pandemic has probably had to say it, but it was a real reflection of our desire to keep our community entertained, and give them those regular personalities and shows and topics that they're used to. And I was amazed, looking back at what we accomplished in 2020, to see that not only did we keep some of the programming going, but we added 10 new shows to our
Right.
roster, and a lot of it is award winning, which is just incredible. Because a lot of those interviews that were done, for really hard hitting, content pieces for our Complex World franchise, it was all done, via Zoom, but it
Mm-hmm.
still resonated. It still was very shareable. Obviously last year, there was a lot of content, covering a lot of the racial injustice. And so I really feel like we rose to the occasion, and, we really gave our audience what they needed, to continue to feel that sense of normalcy and connectivity,
Mm-hmm.
and, something to really get behind. So I'm incredibly proud of the pivoting that went on, aside from, that, like I mentioned before. I mean, I guess I'll say it again, but, it's just amazing that we are able to communicate with each other, have more transparency within our organization. Really a lot of care has gone into the mental health of the staff. I'm sure there's a lot of that on Kay's team and on Laura's team. We have mental health Fridays, which gives everyone a chance to just really try to disconnect and gather themselves and not be sitting in their dining room all day long doing work. And so I have to say, again, I'm really proud of the pivots that we made, both for our external community and our internal community, our staff and our team members that are still grinding and making this amazing content from their homes.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I remember back, when you were getting back and the David Weinstein and his team, I mean, they had plan A, plan B, plan C. Plan A was we can't shoot on location. Plan B was we can't shoot in our studio in New York or LA. Plan C was we can't leave our homes. And, they managed, obviously we ended up in plan C for the better part of 2020. But even through that, I mean, yes, the stories, the complex world pieces were phenomenal. And then also some of the talent we were able to secure, we were able to shoot with Barack Obama and Speedy. And then we also shot with Kamala Harris right before or after she was picked as VP nominee. So, amazing to see what the team was able to do in that pivot, and almost do some of our best work, I would say. So Laura, I know we talked a bit about, the pivot and being able to be flexible and nimble and scrappy with shooting from home and things like that. But what I'd love to hear a bit more about is that brand campaign that you guys kind of launched during this time, because I think it kind of shines a light on maybe some audience that normally wouldn't be seen in marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything Kay and Rachel hit on around that kind of internal teamwork to make the external, thing happen was very much true as it relates to this campaign. So we had conceived of this idea to launch our first ever brand campaign even before the pandemic. And we had always really wanted to show our real members and kind of shine a light on them in a campaign in a big way. And it just felt like the perfect time, again, not knowing anything that was going to happen in the world. And then really when everything started to happen and we started to realize we were going into a very serious time, it really forced us to not only re-examine creatively, as our teams, and we had such amazing creative partners, both our internal creative team and agency partners, really examining the messages that we were putting in market and saying is this, does this still stand in a time when everyone was kind of starting to put out community messages? And, I feel like we can all remember the ads of stronger together. And so we really had to be even more thoughtful of how do we make sure our message is unique to Peloton? And then the added reality of we shot 8 different members literally across the world. So in London, in Germany, across the US, in West Coast, Central America, literally everywhere. And so our whole team, I was laughing when you said Video Village. I was like, oh man, the wake up call, 3 a.m. New York time to start shooting in Germany. I mean, it was just amazing. But I think it was such a testament to we had such a fire beneath the team to share this story and to put this spotlight on our members, who literally, I mean, they inspire everything our team does. And so it was of all the times to want to tell this story in a big way, this was the time. And so it was sort of just phenomenal to watch people literally make whatever needed to happen to be able to make that a reality and get the work done. And we ended up with 2 30-second TV spots and 6 different individual 60-second spotlights that were just such a beautiful, I really think of the campaign as a love letter to our community. And I think it was just that warm message that people needed, and really felt seen in at this time when it was this is so true of my experience as a Peloton member. So we were really excited to be able to pull it off and put that out there and kind of pay homage, to the community that really like powers what we do. So it was certainly I wouldn't say like a pivot, but as far as like a strategy, but it was a pivot in terms of like how do we just make this happen, and just
Hmm.
all the work that has to kind of really come together behind the scenes to pull that off. I think it's been really honestly cool to see even throughout COVID, like just what new production technologies and what new approaches people are innovating on, like literally every day, to
Yeah.
get smarter and smarter. And just the whole creative like industry at large, I feel like is just coming up with so many unique solutions right now. It's really amazing.
Yeah. I think, our CRO was talking to us earlier today, and he was talking about how we're entering the roaring 20s, which 1920 kind of decade of innovation. And obviously none of us, lived during that time, but I do feel, that if I were alive in that time, the same energy that we're seeing now, with a lot of the innovation and these new practices, is going to be really interesting to see kind of what sticks. And I think that's a great segue into the last question, which is, going forward, will these new behaviors or methods stick? I think we touched on a little bit of this with the hybrid model question that came up. But Kay, what do you feel the sparks are going to keep? New processes, new methods, or behaviors in 2021 and beyond.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think we'll for sure continue the content piece and continue to deliver content with players and really make it, we all hear that word organic content, but how do we deliver that to our fans, tell the stories of our players, and also synchronize that with the brands we work with, and then continue to tell the stories from within our community. So the stories of our season ticket holders. We are about to embark on our 25th anniversary season. So there's a lot of stories that we have from the new fans we have now to the fans that were our inaugural members, and some of which are still season ticket holders today. So there's going to be a lot of really great storytelling. I think this time has shown we're all people. I think we've all been
Mhm.
on calls with CEOs and big time executives, and there's children and dogs. Um, and so I think we really will. We're going to stick to growing our fan base, continuing to adapt with technology. And then as we go back to whatever this normalcy looks like for all of us, embrace those connections in person and continue. I think it's run parallel with both of them. So have those
Mhm.
traditional models that we all love, and Rachel talked about complex con, right? Like everyone loves going through and walking and all of these things. And so we want to keep all of that, but also keep running really fast in the other lane and embrace these technologies we're all so fortunate to really use. And so I'm excited to see how we do both going into that time. But I do think there'll be some few things you guys will see sticking, that our team has working, and I'm excited to bring those to light.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what you said about the CEOs and the kids and the dogs, it's like I feel like we were almost reminded of our humanity during this time. That like, when we go to work, we're very polished and kind of our best version of ourselves. And not to say that we aren't when we're home, but you are able to let your guard down. So I think reminding everyone that we have lives outside of the office, almost maybe made the work better because you removed some of that artificiality that happens, when you're at an office. So that definitely resonated with me. Rachel, where do we see things going for Complex? What's going to stick? Are we doing more? I mean, we're doing more complex lands, but what else is going to continue on?
I think that our will to continue to innovate is going to always be at the forefront for us. I think that you'll see that in the coming weeks, I should say, as we start to jump on new platforms, which is really exciting. I don't know if we would have put the time and taken the risks to uh, jump on those platforms in the past, but I think there's a real interest and curiosity about things that we can experiment with now that we've kind of opened ourselves up to listen to our community and keep kind of connecting in different ways. And so yes, there will be more virtual events. There will probably still continue to be remote shows. Sometimes I watch our shows and I think I don't really even feel that there's a difference anymore. But I think we all have to, just admit that, we're not going back into our office anytime soon. I don't know how Kay and Laura feel about that, but maybe it'll be summer when we're back in, or maybe not. So I think we just have to keep on figuring out how to, bring our teams together and, just really get motivated to go bigger and better, and try to kind of challenge ourselves to keep engaging our audience in new and different ways.
Yeah. I definitely personally loved watching Hot Ones from home versus in studio, because I think Dom might hold back sometimes on putting that hot sauce on. But a lot of those celebrities they had a heavy hand, and I think they doused it. So I think it was like 10 times hotter than what they'll typically get when they're in studio.
And it's so much fun to see what Naomi Campbell's living room looks like. Exactly what you think.
Agreed.
No, but it's like you said, it humanizes celebrities too. So it even is better for storytelling. So I couldn't agree with you more. That's been a fun one.
Yeah. And Laura, what's gonna stick? I know obviously you are also able to test, new content formats, and, some of the work that with Year of Yes and Shonda, and where do you see some of the stuff that you guys were able to test and trial going in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what Rachel and Kay touched on is very true for us. We are in the very fortunate position that our community is super vocal about what they like and what they want more of and what they would love to see. So we are very obsessive over listening to that feedback, and we were able to launch new modalities. We launched bar as well as Pilates in the last year. And so just really staying close to what our members are looking for from us. And yeah, like you said, the Shonda program was such a fun one that we were able to launch, and really leaning into storytelling and what people want to hear from us. So I think that's just going to always be what's kind of at the forefront of how we make decisions and how we kind of choose what to do and what to iterate on. And so I think we'll sort of keep that as our North Star.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that, again, as a writer, seeing what you guys even were able to innovate with the product itself, and we talked a little bit about that, where it felt like it almost happened overnight, where you had one version of a bike, and then almost overnight you had this other version that was completely based on member feedback. So I think, yeah, if anyone is going to be continuing to innovate, I definitely think it's Peloton. And I know that we're almost at time, so I'm just going to do one last question before we wrap up here. And this one's really for hopefully the students watching. But Kay, what's some advice that you'd give to a prospective student that's looking to get into your field?
I think first of all, get your foot in the door. Don't be afraid to do that. I think people have this idea in their head that they want to be in a specific role or a specific department. And I think get your foot in the door, and then you can adjust from within an organization. Also, if you're going to reach out to people on LinkedIn or send them an email, be specific with what your ask is. Don't be afraid to say, I'm looking for advice about these 1, 2, 3 items, especially if you're reaching out to the higher up executives. They might not have a lot of time to just answer a question like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Could you do that? Ask for specific advice. And also be mindful in your applications. If you know somebody that's connected with someone, reach out and say, hi, I see you're connected with so-and-so. Could you make a favorable introduction? I think those are things that help people stand out versus just kind of sending in applications. But I tell people all the time, once you get your foot in the door, work your ass off, for no better words, and you'll get where you want to go.
Yeah, I love that. I don't ever remember what the quote was from or what the lyric was from, but your network is your net worth. And I feel like a lot of people need to start tapping in and leveraging that network, and not feeling bad about it. I think that's how any of us have gotten our foot in the door. So I think that is spot on. Rachel, same question. Any advice you'd give to students that are looking to get into your field?
Well, Kay kind of stole what I was going to say because I have a great example of that. Coming out of college, I desperately wanted to work for MTV and Viacom. It was just like that was my dream. And I moved to New York specifically with that goal. And, I'm going to show my age, but, I was looking to work at the network. I wanted to work on, Road Rules or Real World. And so I just had to find any way in. And so, I did what Kay is essentially recommending, which is I took the first job that I could, working not at the network, but at the .com. And I think I have like a really nice 360 story because, I got a lot of experience working on the sales side, and the marketing side of MTV.com. I had no interest in it whatsoever. All I wanted to do was be like a PA on Cribs and, again, old. And I just said, whatever it takes for me to be there, I'll do it. And I worked so many different channels. In the end, I never worked for the network. I moved up in the world of sales and marketing, which was so strange to me. I had no connection to it. And then, something years later, I ended up working in the digital space again, doing production, what I had gone to college for, which was such a strange 360, to come back, to what I had gone to school for. But it's because of this path that I was set on, because I was so determined to work for Viacom and work for MTV. So I could not agree with Kay more. Get your foot in the door however you can and work as many channels as you can. And then networking is, I know everybody says it, but it's incredible the different resources we have today to network. And I don't think you need to meet somebody for coffee or drinks in order to connect with people. Now people are connecting over every single social media platform there is. So I would say just network your ass off if we're going to start cussing.
Yeah. And I think the willingness to share too, right? Like I think, to your point about platforms, I think Clubhouse and obviously LinkedIn and things like that do give the ability to like hear and share and for people to share. And I think there's a lot of folks out there that are willing to give advice. And I also love what you said, which, resonated with me around grabbing an oar, no job too small, willing to take on kind of anything. And that go get itness, I think really does, work to people's benefits when they realize that folks are willing to do anything. And Laura, same question for you. In closing, what advice would you give anyone looking to get into marketing or strategic marketing rather at a place like Peloton or any brand for that matter?
Yeah, well, there's already been great advice given, so I'll just say, I echo that. But I guess one piece quite specific to my experience, I started at Peloton when it was really a startup. So perhaps for people who might be interested in pursuing a startup or a smaller stage company, or I would say in general, one thing that when I talk to a lot of people who are interested in different industries, something I think that's often overlooked is like company size. And especially when you're starting out at your career, like, do you want to be the person, like I was the third person on our brand team thrown into chaos and fire, like you're doing everything, which is very typical of a startup. And that was awesome for me because that's my personality. But I think knowing yourself and knowing like, what am I looking for in terms of work environment? Like, do I want that sort of scrappy go-getter, experience, or maybe I want like a little more structured training program and I want to learn like best practices in these three areas. And I think both are great paths, and either like there's no right answer in general, but I think there's a right answer for you. So I would say like really look inward and think about like what's the type of work environment that you want to be in and you see yourself thriving in. Because I think often people, there's so many cool industries, which is important, but I think company size and the type of role you'll be in within the team is also really kind of a critical like jumping off point, depending on where you start. So it's maybe like just a build to some of the great advice that's already been given, specific a little to my experience.
Yeah, and I think what that hits for me is I think a lot of folks tend to jersey chase when they get into their career. They have these company names that they want to work for, and maybe a Peloton isn't as well known coming out of school as maybe some of these other more established companies are, and also being willing to not jersey chase. Maybe if there's that
Totally.
company you really want to work for, there's always going to be opportunities to go there. So maybe taking those risks early on and getting some of those experiences will actually make you better for when you're finally ready to go to that company that is your number one.
Absolutely. Nobody knew what Peloton was when I started working here, and everyone was like, the bike that goes where? Nowhere? Oh, what? So it's definitely changed. So couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining and giving me all of your time. I know we've had calls even before this. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank the three of you and thank you, UCLA Anderson, for giving us a platform. And I will turn it over to the rest of the organizers to close us out.